I'd love to bring in Tim Morris now, because there's been a few comments actually in the chat asking whether this will mean that there will be more ambassadors with previous international development experience. And Tim, who I happen to know, is a former ambassador and has international development experience and has a question. So I think we'd love to hear from you, Tim.
So much, and it's great to follow my former boss, Harriett. I was British ambassador in South Sudan and in DRC, and was a vital coordinator on the Sahel. And I have been spending some time defending the DFiD work stream, the 0.7, and a lot of messages in tune with what people have said. I think there's something which needs to be said about the wider foreign policy picture. There's a risk in all these debates of caricaturing different departments, which after all, in the end, are buildings. They're not people. People move around. Lots of former DFiD people are now ambassadors and high commissioners in Africa, for example. And we're waiting an overall review of the UK's international strategy, which is surely the most critical element, which will determine both how this departmental reorganisation works and indeed how trade and defence, which are essential parts of our overseas projection, are brought into that discussion. I mean, it's worth pointing out too that trade has a very profound role in the elimination of poverty. So there is a risk, I think, in this debate of actually getting away from some of the core overseas policy questions which need to be actually led by our elected politicians. I think there's something about this debate where there's a sort of assumption that separate departments have their own sort of beating hearts and they're all fighting against each other. Now, you know, there's an element of that. But what officials are waiting for is leadership from elected politicians. And this review, if it works and it actually gets stuck in properly to the issues, will be profoundly important. But just to say at the end, I mean, I very much agree with Harriett's opening statement about this, that there's a huge exaggeration about the degree to which departments and the different sort of tribes in Whitehall are somehow working against each other. I mean, I was a DFiD ambassador, and I proudly used to say that when I went into my office when I arrived in Congo or South Sudan. DFiD objectives and work programs were actually a fundamental part of our foreign policy objectives in those countries. Girls' education, humanitarian activities, these things are policy-rich statements of what this country is about. I find it difficult to believe that our political leaders will actually go far away from that. Though, of course, it's quite right, as people have been alerting us to, that there are a whole series of issues to be potentially concerned about. I was actually, I said something in public, which perhaps I shouldn't have, but about concern about the loss of the Secretary of State position, Secretary of State, the DFiD position. That seemed to me the single greatest loss of any future reorganisation. There was a comment made before the reorganisation was announced. But I would very much like to ask Harriett about the review and what her interpretation is.
Thank you, Tim.
Oh, lovely to see you as well, Tim, and bringing back happy memories. And I'm obviously not probably as close as you are now to what's going on in terms of the review, but I'm quite sure that it will continue to embody, as part of the review, the UK having signed up to a wide range of international commitments as well as our own statutory commitments, and therefore you know, perhaps I am less worried than I'm hearing from some people in the audience and from Nadine's opening remarks about the shift that that might result in. So, you know, to give you an example of the kind of thing where I think the review, I hope, will say, you know, this is a good thing, is the approach that we have been taking to a country let's take, well, but it's perhaps not fair to pick a particular country, let's pick a whole area, a vast area, the Sahel, and think about, you know, it's an area you know well, Tim, the fact that there is the world's most dangerous peacekeeping operation happening there, and that the UK has announced that we will be providing UN peacekeepers to that, and that one of the legacies of the 2015 Security and Defence Review was that the UK wanted to step up its role, its peacekeeping role. I think it's been widely agreed that the UK contribution to the South Sudan peacekeeping force has been incredibly impactful. And so I personally think it's exactly aligned with all of these different elements of our international commitments that we should be doing this to the peacekeeping operation based in Mali. So I think that's the sort of thing I would hope to see being emphasized in the review. If that was something that were going to be downplayed or downgraded, I would be voicing extreme concerns from the backbenchers. But for what I know, I would have thought that that was very much a direction of travel. Secondly, that there will be an enormous focus on making COP26 a success. Now, as anyone who has traveled widely in the poorest countries in the world, they will see that they are the ones who are suffering most from climate change and from the degradation of the environment. And so I would hope that, again, there will be a big focus on our international climate commitments and making sure that that's spent in those very, very climate degraded and climate affected parts of the world. You know, one of my passions when I was privileged to be a DFiD minister was all the poor women who were spending hours every day traipsing to cut down prime forests and cook over that in their homes, and you know, choking themselves and their families and causing major health problems as a result. You know, this is a single issue that really encapsulated all the things that we would try to change. So I hope that it will be emphasizing that, the importance of the climate side of things, the importance of to the UK of making sure that we deal with conflict affected areas, because it's in everyone's interest to secure a better future for our children, that we tackle that.